What up, everyone? And this is the Pause Where I Play podcast. And actually, this is just a special episode that I, Casey, am making with my friend Paul. How's it going, Paul?
Hey, going good. How's it going for you?
It's going good. I watched recently the entire 3 seasons of Avatar: The Last Airbender and loved it. And then
Quick correction, 3 books. There's no seasons.
Oh, books.
I'm just messing.
Oh, man. Well, Paul is a true, I don't know what you call him, a true fan, a true believer of the Avatar and whatnot. He loves it. I've seen him posting stuff about it and like life lessons. And so I messaged Paul. I said, Paul, I just finished this and I want to talk about it with you on a podcast. I said, would you be comfortable doing a podcast? And so suddenly here Paul is.
Heck yeah.
So Avatar: The Last Airbender, it aired from 2005 to 2008. It actually debuted and kind of went on Nickelodeon, right? And it actually was just released every like one of those 30-minute episodes at a time for those years. And I think I've talked about this before. I watched Dragon Ball Z for a while, but I did not necessarily get into Avatar when I was younger. This is really my first time getting through it and going through it. And let me tell you, I watched a couple episodes when I was younger, but I was blown away as an adult at how much good is in this this TV series, because it's like designed for kids, like teenagers, right? Mm-hmm. But it has so much more than that.
Yeah. No, I was actually one of the people who watched it when it aired on Nickelodeon. I remember going over to my buddy's house next door because we didn't have cable at the time, and I remember watching the preview for it when they were like talking about like, hey, this show's about to come out, like you guys should watch it. And I remember being blown away by the preview, and I was only like, I don't know, maybe like 12 or 13 years old at the time, and I didn't follow it very well as a kid because we didn't have access to Nickelodeon at my house. So I'd watch an episode or two, but once I got into high school, my brother pirated the show. Don't tell the creator. And we just like bought a cheap laptop for like $200 and then just did a bunch of torrents. And I remember sloughing school, don't tell my dad, and just watching it in my buddy's car, like a whole day of school wasted. Not wasted, it was invested in this show. So I have a lot of good memories growing up with this show, and watching it as an adult and kind of dissecting all the philosophies and the different story arcs and the character development. Like that stuff just like blows me away now as an adult. I noticed that a little bit as a teenager, but now like these are things that you can honestly like pattern your life after and live like a good, honest life by following some of the principles taught in this show. And so I just want to bear my testimony about Avatar. Anyways.
Oh, man.
I have a lot to say about it.
No, we'll get into that. Actually, like that was my favorite part about it, was there's so much symbolism. So yeah, going back to kind of like the details about it, the creators were Michael Dante DiMartino and Brian Conzectio. Sorry guys, I butchered your names. The series won 1 Primetime Emmy and had 8 other wins and nominations, and it was top rated TV at number 12, which I think is kind of cool. And just a couple of fun know-hows. So Prince Zuko, some of you may know the character or the person who voices his character more than you know his voice, maybe, I don't know, but that is Dante Bosco, who at one time was Rufio. So like that's kind of a fun thing to know about it. And then just kind of like the basics, you got Zach Tyler, who plays Aang, Jack DeSena, who's Sokka. There's a person who actually voices Appa, the freaking thing. I didn't know that, but I guess he does make sounds and stuff. And there's Mae Whitman, who's Katara. And then one I want to do, who's Uncle Iroh, his name is Mako, actually. Mm-hmm. That's his name. So yeah, that's kind of the background and details. So yeah, like when you first saw this, and you kind of brought this up, but you saw the preview on Nickelodeon, what was your impression of it? Like really, when you saw this, were you like, holy crap, like this is going to be a ton of fun? Or were you a little bit like, do you remember that well?
Yeah, so they just presented it as like a kid who has the ability to manipulate all these different elements, fire, water, earth, and air. And the preview is super eye-catching. I should go back and just watch it just to reminisce on that. But yeah, I was like, man, that is so cool. Like the ability to use those elements. And in the preview, they showed all the martial arts that they used to bend the elements. And I thought, man, that is so cool. And I grew up watching like Jackie Chan Adventures on like CBS Kids or whatever, one of those Saturday morning cartoons, and I was all about, you know, action adventure cartoons, and I was like, this fits the bill. And yeah, I was immediately intrigued when I first watched the preview and watched the first couple of episodes. But yeah, you know, the first couple of episodes are definitely like more geared toward kids, and later on in season 1 it like flips a switch and says like, you know, like this is going to teach you some good lessons. So yeah, I'm excited to talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah, no, I remember seeing previews for it. Like we had Dish Network, right? And Dish, you better pay us. But we had Dish, and I watched it, and I watched a couple episodes. I remember watching the first couple. I think I watched the preview. Not the preview, the premiere episode of the Avatar, because I remember watching it where Sokka goes up and hits the ice, you know, and all that kind of stuff. And not Sokka, Katara is the one who goes up and hits the ice.
No,
and,
it's
like,
Sokka. Yeah,
is it Sokka?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was like, wait, is it Katara? But essentially, I remember watching that and kind of like being like pretty wowed by it. And I watched the first couple episodes, and then like I was old enough as well that I was kind of like not interested in it. And then going back later, so probably like 2009, 2010, like I started like watching it online a little bit. And then just like the other week, I was like, I'm going to watch all of this because it's awesome. And I remember when they announced it was going to be on Netflix, I was like so pumped. And my wife actually was like, Case, it's going to be on Netflix, because I always brought up how much I enjoyed it. And like I have fond memories of watching a number of episodes, but never had watched it like for serious to understand the story. So yeah, it's going to be pretty rad. Like my first impression of this, like you said, I watched Dragon Ball Z. I don't know if you ever watched that.
Oh yeah.
But I was like, maybe this is like a more realistic style of Dragon Ball Z, but as it unfolds, it's a bigger adventure in my mind than Dragon Ball Z, and it's super rad, and I love it. The 4 nations, you know, you got the 4 elements, and it's just a hoot. So before we really dive into stuff, I just want to know who your favorite main character is.
Yeah, I know there's so many good main characters. I think everybody loves Zuko's arc and all the awesome emotional experiences that you get to have with Zuko as he grows into the hero you didn't expect. But my favorite character was always Toph. I think she was always super cool with her like snarky attitude, her super strong abilities, and like I actually posted something on Facebook about in preparation for this episode, just asking like what are your favorite aspects of Avatar: The Last Airbender, and somebody said the way that they portray the different women in the show and the way that they portray people with disabilities in the show, and having a blind girl who's super strong and a super skilled bender being a teacher for the Avatar. That ticks all the boxes, and I just love her story. And all in all,
she's kind of like it's the opposite of what everyone wants to. She's your richest to rags character in this, I feel, because she comes from a very like well status and statured family, and then all of a sudden everything is like flipped over, right? Like she is like living on the road with the Avatar. She gets into some trouble. She learns hard life lessons, you know.
Yeah.
And it's fun. It's a fun story arc, and I love that statement right there that you said. Like, it's cool to see how they portray women and people with disabilities in this. As like a person who only has one arm, I make a ton of one-arm jokes in these podcasts. You know, I single-handedly do it all by myself, like that kind of stuff, which are terrible one-arm jokes, but I love that. I remember when they go to the air temple and Aang freaks out, right? And he like is like, "You're desecrating my stuff. You've ruined everything."
Yeah.
And I remember the kid coming out in the wheelchair, and that just being so cool that like they had built and designed this world that he could like work through and work in. And I think that that's so cool, and it's very empowering for kids with disabilities to see that, or people with disabilities in general, to see that, you know, people are working to make the world better for them and to make it more able for you, but at the same time you have to work with your ideas to make the world more adaptable for yourself.
Exactly.
And I love that because the kid himself is smart, just like his father is smart. So the kid's not just living off of his dad's glory. He has ideas of his own, and I think that's cool.
Yeah,
so you brought up Toph, and I'm gonna honestly go with Zuko.
No, yeah, he's the man.
It's funny because I have this side where like if I were sorted into a Hogwarts house, 9 out of 10 times I'd be a Slytherin, and everyone's like, "Wait, you'd be a Slytherin?" And it's like, "Yep, I would be a Slytherin." But Prince Zuko, I understand the rage and the frustration of wanting to be accepted, of wanting people to accept you for who you are, and like the hurt that comes with growing up and wanting acceptance, and that's what we see Zuko's character go through. But he had a much more severe experience. He was burned by the Fire Lord, right?
Yeah, by his father.
His father, the Fire Lord.
Just punched him in the face with a fireball.
Yeah, and that's the thing. And but you see Zuko having a teacher and his uncle, a mentor who's always chill. And I have to put Iroh in the same, I feel like Iroh and Zuko are two peas in a pod when you're talking about main characters, because essentially their whole story is together. But with Zuko, right, he learns from his uncle, and his uncle is always just even kill. His uncle steps in when he has to, but other than that, he's just
yeah,
he's such a chill dude.
No, yeah, I love Iroh. One of the main things that you get from this is you see a world that's divided, and he's interestingly on the side that's supposed to be the strongest, the most powerful nation. Later it explains that they were so wealthy that they had to share their prosperity with the world and control the world. Basically, it was the goal of the Fire Nation, and he grew up in that. His father was one of the guys who started the war and everything, but he was unique, and he was able to find truth and knowledge and power from all the different elements and all the different nations. And his knowledge wasn't just restricted to one sector, one space. It was more broad, and he brings that into everything he says is almost quotable because he has learned a lot of wisdom from the different nations. He has his own arc, and oh man, so much love for Iroh.
Yeah, well, when you're talking about that, when you're talking about him drawing information from so many different nations and not just living up to the propaganda he's taught in the Fire Nation and he's a leader of and has to perpetuate out to his soldiers, right? There's a quote from him, and I post this on Facebook, and I want to quote it really fast. It is important to draw wisdom from many different places. If we take it from only one place, it becomes rigid and stale. Understanding others, the other elements and the other nations will help you become whole. And that's from Iroh, and that is him to Zuko. Yeah. And I love that quote. And it makes sense because, and it's super relevant today. And this was something I didn't realize how relevant this series is to the times we live in. And this isn't to get political, but it's my opinion, right? Is too often we find ourselves immersed in just one sector of knowledge. And if I'm searching for news, I have to draw it from 5 sources before I build my conclusion. And it's kind of funny because my wife gets so irritated when she's seeing all these different media outlets, she's like, why do you have so many different ones with all opposing opinions sometimes? I'm like, I have to figure out what the story is. I have to understand it. Yeah. Because I want to maintain that ability to see through things, right? And to understand it. That's Iroh for you. In just his time with Zuko, they visited every nation. Mm-hmm. They've been to air temples, they've been to water, tribes and cities in the water. They've been to Ba Sing Se. They've been to which is the Earth Kingdom. They've been to all these different kingdoms, and even as an adult, he's continued to learn and learn from others, and he goes out and you see him interact with people, which is super cool about this series.
Yeah, for sure.
It's not just let's only focus on these main characters, but what they do as they interact with others, amazing.
Yes,
this is a the plot thickens type story. I don't know if that's a good way to say it or not.
No, yeah, I think so many shows focus on the main characters, and the filler characters or just the side characters, supporting characters don't get much attention, or there's not enough depth, or they're just one note, shallow, you don't even remember them. But with this series, what they do really well is make even the smallest characters that are only in there for 10, 15 seconds like matter. Going back to the Facebook post, somebody commented about that, and there's an episode where Sokka takes over an airship, and he just makes a comment like, hey, we're gonna celebrate this guy's birthday, to get rid of all the people working on the airship. And like the guy is like super excited. He's like, the captain remembered my birthday. And like he's only on screen for like 15 seconds, but like he's memorable because like the writers took time to like make that character important. And like what you were saying, Iroh makes those connections with people that he travels with. He's always polite. He always tries to hear them out or learn from them or something. And that, I think that's super good example for kids and for us as adults to learn. You know, wherever we are, we can learn from other people and just be nice to them, you know, like be Uncle Iroh to everybody you meet.
Yeah.
You know?
You could be anyone, but you should be like Uncle Iroh.
Yes.
The dragon of the West is now.
The dragon of the West.
No, I love that. Here's a question. Do you have any minor characters, like side characters, or like whether it's a group or like, you know, just a character that stands out that was like they were there, like that guy, like just a short moment, but like made an impact. It could have been like 2 or 3 episodes or 1 episode, but like.
Yeah. No,
You're gonna say Jet, aren't you?
No,
I'm
hate
kidding.
Jet. Jet's a-hole. Another character who everybody loves, is only in a few episodes, is like the boulder. Like
boulder thinks, right? He talks in third person.
Always talks in third person. Always super like over the top with what he says, and even when he's not in the ring, he still talks like he's in the ring, and I think that's super cool. You know, like
he reminds me of The Rock. I don't know
exactly.
if you watch like professional wrestling. Like, do you smell what The Rock's got cooking? Like all that kind of stuff. And like he has that similar personality.
No, I'm pretty sure that was a straight ripoff from WWE, and I love it. And I don't know, it's really funny. Like Casey said, I post about this a lot, and I posted a quote of just a picture of him saying, I'm sure you're reading this in the voice, and he says like, the boulder is not amused, and everybody's like, yep, I totally read it in his voice. Like, again, a character who's just minor, but like comes to the top. Like the cabbage guy, he's like a running joke throughout a couple episodes, and people love him. Another one, just random character, only on screen maybe 5 seconds in the whole series, is the guy who like foams at the mouth on the Kyoshi Island. He's on Kyoshi Island, and the people that like were doing this saw that a lot of people liked him, and they like spattered him throughout the series like 2 more times or something like that. And I just think it's hilarious that, you know, the writers are able to see what the fans liked, and then they're able to bring them back in different episodes. So
they're like trickled through like little Easter eggs almost,
exactly.
But they have significance. They're not just like, oh, there's this random cabbage man. Like it plays on, and it's not just like a cheap thrill, I guess is the way I say it. It actually has a purpose a lot of times. I love that. Like, the boulder thinks, and the hippo guy, is that what he is? That whole arena is way cool in the Earth Nation. I think that's fun.
Yeah.
I want to, like, it's kind of funny because I'm now watching The Legend of Korra, which I'm going to ask you a couple questions about later.
Cool.
But I'm now watching it, and I like already want to go back and rewatch Avatar, not because The Legend of Korra is bad, but because I'm like, the Avatar was just so warm and friendly and stuff like that. And it was like every character, even if they were dark, was like good, and it was just fun.
Yeah, Korra's a little more intense, but it's all good.
Yeah. Well, for me, like, my, like, side character are the Swamp Hillbillies. Like, those guys are great. Like, the guy who gets in there with, like, the vines and stuff. And he's just kind of doing that. Like, I loved those guys because they were just, like, kind of, like, little weirdos. I liked, is it Bato of the Watertribe? Like, that guy was kind of cool. Like, just, like, I don't know, the Watertribe, the Southern Watertribe is just a super interesting, like, they're almost like a mythical being. Like, it's like, for instance, if we were to go to the Himalayas, right? Like, we've heard of the Sherpas, but like we get out there and we don't really know about them. And then we like experience their culture if you ever go out there. And I thought those guys were fun. And then I love the Kyoshi warriors. Like,
yeah, super cool.
Super rad. And then I just forgot the princess's name, Zuko's sister.
Azula.
Azula's two little henchwomen.
Yes.
Those two are pretty rad. Like the one who's like,
Tai.
yeah, like the one who's like depressed and sulky all the time, or so it seems. And then the happy-go-lucky one, and it's like you don't really fit with this character, but like you add value, and like you're both like, it's cool. And like you said, they portray women really well, and like each of the women in this, like they experience things, hard things, like, and they overcome them, which is super cool. And I think that's why I like those two a lot, is just for that purpose.
Yeah. My wife, she wanted me to make sure I said this on the podcast, but in a lot of shows, you get one female character, you know, and that female character has to carry all the different, like, things that women go through. And sometimes, you know, they're the angry women, or they're the sassy women, or all this stuff, or they're the smart women, the responsible women, but there's only one of them, and they have to wear all those hats, you know?
Yeah.
But with this show, they have so many different women that it shows that there's not one specific way to be a woman. You know, like you can be like smart and brave and caring like Katara, or I don't know, like Azula, just like mirror opposite. But because there's so many different characters in there, like Toph, she's messy and kind of unorganized and stuff, but
she's powerful at the same time.
They're all strong. They all portray women as strong characters, which we really love.
Well, and they make hard decisions as well. Like they make decisions that sometimes, like in a lot of films, might just be reserved for men.
Yeah.
Like that, which I think is like kind of interesting, and maybe I don't know. Maybe it's not maybe. It's I think we need more of that. Like
of course,
even
100%.
In like other cartoons, maybe even in films. Like I don't know. Like you're right. Like one woman can't wear all the hats. Most women have to wear many hats, but they can't wear all of them at the same time.
Exactly. And so like Black Widow in the Avengers, like she has gotten so much hate from fans because she plays one type of person in one movie and then another type of person in another movie, but she's like one of the only female characters in that show for the longest time, until like just barely with the Wasp and stuff. But that's part of the reason why we have those bad female characters in movies, because there's not enough of them in there. And one of the things that I think is really cool about Katara, and kind of at the end of the series where she confronts the person who kills her mother, and she's so angry and she has so much hate and so much revenge that she's like inches away from killing this guy who's at this point a defenseless old man, because so many years have passed. But then she doesn't kill him, and Aang's like super happy for her because she forgave him. And she corrects him and says like, no, I didn't forgive him. Like I will never forgive him for what he did to my mom. But I didn't go through and kill him because it wasn't going to benefit me. It wasn't going to bring her back and stuff. And that's another thing, like you expect, even Katara, she's like the caring, nurturing one, but she also is multi-dimensional. She has the ability to feel anger, frustration, revenge, hate, and all this stuff like in one character as well. Yeah. And so I'm like, why can't we have more of these characters in other TV shows and stuff? And so,
well, these animated characters are almost human.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Superhuman. They have so many emotions that everybody can relate to, you know? Like everybody has felt betrayed or hate or resentment. Jealousy, exactly. And these characters that are for a kid's show are portraying these very well, and they like show restraint, which is awesome. That's one of the hardest things for us as human beings to do, is like when we are in these emotional situations, to show restraint, and they do it really well. And I mean, we're just gonna praise this show till the cows come home.
Literally, I don't have a bad thing to say about this series. I loved it. Okay, what's your favorite episode, or what are your favorite episodes, Paul?
So I knew I was going to come on this podcast, and I actually broke it down into my top 3 favorite episodes for each book or each season. And I'm going to try to narrow it down because I could talk about this, like I said, for a long time.
Okay.
So in the first season, like we talked about, the first couple episodes are pretty kid friendly. It looks like it's just going to be a kid cartoon. A lot of like fun stuff is happening. until the episode called The Storm. And The Storm is an episode where there's this big storm and they're trying to, they have to like hide in shelter. And Aang and Zuko are telling kind of their backstories and how they got to where they are at that point of the series. And Aang is feeling like a lot of shame, a lot of regret, resentment for himself because he ran away from his responsibility as an avatar and froze himself for 100 years. And he feels a lot of regret because he feels personally responsible for the state that the world is in now because he wasn't there to stop it at the beginning. And so at this point, the Fire Nation has taken over almost the entire world, except for one part of the Earth Kingdom. And
what is the Avatar's job really fast so people understand?
Yeah, so the Avatar's job is to keep balance between the four nations and keep peace. He's also a bridge to the spirit world. That's another thing that we could talk about. I mean, we could do a whole like a whole podcast just focusing on the different episodes and the different things within Avatar. But yeah, he communes with the spirits to kind of balance things between there, because every once in a while there's bad spirits that make their way into like their mortal world, and he kind of has to help be a mediator between people and the spirits. And he uses his powers to do that. So,
when most people are able to bend one element, if they can bend,
yeah,
and the Avatar can bend all four elements and has to master them, so that's kind of like unique to him, and that's why he has these abilities.
Yeah, and in the Legend of Korra, there's an episode that goes into the backstory of the very first Avatar and how that got started. So I know there's a couple haters out there on Legend of Korra, but you have that to look forward to, and it's done in a really interesting style because the animation in Korra is a lot better, but when they do this recap, it goes back to like very simple 2D animation to show kind of that it's ancient, I guess, like really back in the day.
I'm not gonna lie to you, like the Legend of Korra, cool animation, but I like the Avatar animation better because it feels like it's a saga, like an older saga, like a journey that like you want to pick up and read as like a kid, a teenager, and even an adult, where you want to go on an adventure. Korra is more like a little bit more like TV now. I don't know.
I mean, by that point they had a lot of funding and they were able to animate a lot more things with computers, so instead of the hand drawings that they did for the first show. But going back to the storm, so we were talking about Aang and his regret and his shame, and kind of doing a backstory to understand the character a little bit more. And at the same time, you have Zuko's backstory into how he got banished from the Fire Nation, how he spoke out against his father, and it makes him a real human, even though he's like the bad guy at this part, and like you're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe he's trying to capture the Avatar. But you see that like his backstory, and it's so compelling, and you're like, why did he get banished? Why is he trying so hard to get back to his family? You know, that it's usually a good thing. Most people want to be with their family. I listened to something recently about that, and how Zuko's relationship with his father is obviously an abusive one, and it shows in this episode and a couple other episodes, that abusive relationship, and how even like abuse victims want to stay with their abusers or go back to their abusers, because for some reason, like, it's really hard for abuse victims to leave their abusers, and it's subtle, but like it's in there. I think that's really interesting. That's part of Zuko's arc, is him wanting to go back to his family that has been really abusive to him up to this point. He's only 16 years old and he's already experienced like a lot of trauma, to put it lightly. But yeah, that kind of like sets the stage for like the rest of the series and how it's going to play out. So really love the storm in season 1. In season 2, I love Zuko's Alone. It does a lot more work on building Zuko's character. And then the end of season 2, it's kind of like a 2-part episode between the Guru and the Crossroads, where the guru, you learn so much about like the avatar state and the spiritual aspect, and it blends a lot of Eastern culture and Eastern beliefs of like chakras and energy and becoming whole and becoming like spiritual.
Yeah.
And I love that, and just like showing the opposites of different things like guilt and joy and all these different things that he has to work through in himself to become spiritual enough to control the avatar state, which is super awesome. And then the Crossroads of Destiny is like one of the best cliffhangers of all TV. I love that episode right before season 3. And then obviously Sozins Comet, the last episode. It's just such a good payoff of everybody's character coming to a conclusion and ending in such a good, unique way. It's pretty suspenseful too. You're like, what is actually going to happen?
I sweated through that
Yeah.
episode.
If you haven't watched that episode, like when you watch it for the first time, you're like, what the heck is going to happen to everybody? And they do such a good job of like making it really suspenseful. So again, I could probably talk for an hour on each of these episodes, but we got to move on. We don't have that much time.
I wish we did. If anyone ever wants the extended cut of this podcast, just let us know, and Paul and I will come back and do another one.
Yeah, hit us up.
I could most definitely do it. Well, I think that I'm going to have a little bit less of a depth to my favorite episodes. I'm sorry. I like the Blue Spirit one, which is where we're introduced to Zuko's alter ego per se.
Yeah.
Where essentially he doesn't use firebending most of the time. He just goes in and uses pure skill. And I love that. But it's also the episode where Aang has to go get frozen frogs for his friends who are sick. And that's what I remember the most was the frozen frogs. But I like the Blue Spirit because this is the first time where Aang and Zuko work together.
Yep.
And it's very cool. And it's like where I can't remember if it was Zuko or Aang. They're like, do you think we could be friends? And, it's a little bit of foreshadowing, but it's a pretty cool moment. The Siege of the North is actually the first like super war, I feel. It's almost like the Battle of Helm's Deep, in Lord of the Rings. Yep. It's the first one you kind of get into where it's like, this is dope, you're getting into it. And so this is where we originally see, oh my gosh, Sokka's girlfriend and his crush right outside of the girl from the Kyoshi Warriors. But he kind of like actually is in love. And then there's like we learn about the moon spirit and kind of how the worlds work together and how the spirits do things for, the people of this world. And I think that's super cool, and how the moon spirit is killed and then reborn through the sacrifice of this girl, like her offering up her life for it, which I think is super cool. And I love that one. I love the swamp. It is like one of my favorite episodes, primarily because the hillbillies, like I'll be super honest with you, but it also has its own purpose and place in the thing. You got a quote for that one?
Yeah, like I know you were talking about it, and one of my favorite quotes is also from this episode, and it's the swamp guy when he's talking about like the vines that all come from this like huge tree, which is if you've studied imagery or symbolism, like the tree is like one of the most important symbols, and they used it really well in this show. And he says, "You think you're different from me or your friend or this tree? If you listen hard enough, you can hear every living thing breathing together. You can feel everything growing. We're all living together, even if most folks don't act like it. We all have the same roots, and we all are branches of the same tree." I'm like, what? Just like you get blown away by like those truths, and so important right now.
That also sounds like something from the Blue People Avatar movie as well. Like, like that. And so it's super important. I think it's smart to remember that we are all united more than we recognize, because, our world needs balance as well.
For sure.
I love that quote, though. You don't have to send that picture to me. All right. The next for me, thank you for sharing that, by the way, is Sacas Master, which I love so much.
Me too, man. Like I was gonna talk about that one because that's one of my favorites from season 3. But yeah, go ahead and talk about it real quick.
Well, I'm gonna talk about it for a minute, and then, actually, you just tell me, like, why is it your favorite? Why is it one of your favorites?
You go first, and then I'll fill in. I want to hear what you have to say about it first.
Okay, so Sacas Master is just like an episode dedicated to Sokka and his development, right? Like throughout the whole series, we kind of see Sokka is kind of like he's got a plan, but his plan half the time is winging it, and he also is like struggles with confidence because he wants to be like his dad, and his dad's not a bad guy. His dad just left him at a young age to be in charge and to step up to the plate, but he doesn't know if he can, hold his own. And then there's a point in this where they're in the Fire Nation, essentially. They're kind of like disguising one of them's a kid, and I can't remember what the other two are disguised as, but Aang is a kid and then the other two are not. But Aang goes to school, like Katara's had a master of her own, and Sokka this whole time he's just been like a support to them to make sure they're able to do it. He goes out and like gets camp ready, he defends, he provides security, all these type of things. And Aang and Katara are like, you need to have a master of your own. And he actually goes up to the sword master, and he like goes and he like has this super rough interview. He's like, I don't know if I'm actually worthy. I don't know anything. And the guy's like, perfect. Well, that's what I need. You will be my next trainee. And he kind of like goes through and gives Sokka like this whole education about being a sword fighter and how to be one. And then Sokka builds a special sword and everything like that, which he loses. Oh, I just have to bring that up. He lost it. I'm so upset. It's sad.
So heartbreaking.
It was sad. I hope that they found it and it was a relic later, but I don't know. But like at the end of this episode, like Sokka even asks Khan and says, well, master, I'm not worthy of the sword, like because I'm not who I'm telling you I am. And like then he admits it, and then him and the master have the final fight, and then the master like says, great, I knew what you were to be in the beginning. And it's kind of cool. It reminds us, one, that people can see through us from the beginning, but as long as our honest intent is pure, like people will help us. And that's what I think it is people will help you if your intent is pure, but you should be honest. And Sokka learned that through like the times and like the discomfort of having been dishonest, but he had to like, he hauled a meteorite up to the thing, he chiseled away at it, he heated the metal, and he like worked on this sword. And it's just a beautiful process and a beautiful episode. And why is it your favorite?
So exactly what you said. Like I love it for the exact same reasons, but also because it answered a question that like everybody was kind of like thinking about, like you have this Avatar team that has a super powerful waterbender in Katara, super powerful earthbender in Toph, and obviously Aang being able to bend all three of them. And then
and even Momo and the Flying Bison have their own skills and powers. Yeah,
so they airbend too. But but Sokka, like, you wonder, like throughout the season, you wonder how he feels. And then on this episode, it tells you like, you guys have all these powers, I just don't have any powers. And you can like sympathize with that so well, because there's so many people around us that we look to them and we're like, man, like they have it all, they have a house and a car and a nice car and nice clothes and all these things. And like these things that in our culture we think are like better or more powerful, or like they must know something that I don't know, they must have some skills that I don't have that got them to this place. And that can be like really harmful. But when we develop ourselves and we develop our own skills and our own talents, that's when we can flourish. And you can really see like Sokka do really good with that. And I don't know, I'm really happy that they addressed it. Because I'm sure in other shows, like they focus the main time investment into Aang and his development, or like the main character in different shows and their development, and they never talk about like these things that like fans want to know, like how does he feel like. And so I'm just really happy that they addressed it, and I think it's a really, really cool episode.
Well, I like how you touched down on like the developing yourself part, right? And that's like this whole show is about developing the Avatar, but like they develop each character so well, and they like help them grow, and you see it. And what's interesting is after Sokka goes through this training and has his master, he whines less. He's less grumpy. He like kind of has figured out his purpose. And like I recognize that. Like there are times in my life where I'm just like, I have no idea what I'm doing, but I'm winging it. And like as Sokka like develops, he's less complete. He's less of a whiner, a complainer. He just kind of goes with it. And I think that's awesome. That's why I love that episode so much.
Yeah.
And plus that sword is so cool.
I know, a meteor sword that's black. Oh, yeah. So sick.
It is the definition of a badass sword.
I should probably get that tattooed somewhere on my body.
All right. Next, obviously, final episode, which was multiple episodes, but on Netflix, it's crammed into like an hour and a half film type thing. But one of my favorites is the Firebending Masters, which is where they go and they meet the original Firebenders, because Zuko actually loses his firebending because he essentially switches his allegiance. And this firebending, as trained by the Fire Nation, is firebending through anger. Whereas like natural firebending is creating, right?
Yeah.
And so Aang and Zuko, they go to this, what's presumed to be like essentially us going down to an old Aztec temple and like exploring. There's not going to be any Aztecs running around as far as we know, but boom, they discover the original firebenders, and they kind of have them go through these tests, carry the flame a certain amount of ways, and Aang's flame goes out, and like it's kind of like an interesting experience. But like they learn how to airbend, or not airbend, firebend with the power to create, as opposed to it. And Zuko learns a new way to firebend, and it's beautiful. It has more power. And like he says, I've never seen it like this, with so many colors, so many opportunities. And I think that's cool, is like recognizing that like there's different types of motivation. Like at the first of the series, like I said, Zuko's my favorite. His whole thing is to find the Avatar to make his father proud, but like you said, he has this abusive relationship with his dad. So when he goes and does all of this, it is him doing things for himself, selflessly, to make sure that the world has balance and is safe and is better. And that's what he discovers with Aang. Like, even though they don't trust him when he says, I've switched sides, they grow to trust him. They learn to trust him. Like we've said, like this film, for being geared to like teenagers and young kids, is actually super deep and helps you understand the processing that even through change, people aren't going to see you the way that you want people to see you. And I've been there personally. Like I was a terrible teenager and I wanted to change so bad. And it takes a lot of effort to become better. And people don't believe that you're changing. And then there are people who have lived behind this curtain and never saw the bad that you were. Usually those are parents and people who associate with your parents. But then there are people who are outside who see it, who you really were, and then they still don't have the ability to say, well, you were the bad guy, right, the whole time.
Yeah.
But now you're wanting to switch sides. And I love that. And then I'm going to butcher this. How do you say the final episode? Sozins' comet?
Sozins.
Sozins' comet.
Sozins' comet.
So Sozins' comet is based off of, like, the name of it was renamed after the first fire emperor, king, whatever, went and took over and destroyed all the airbenders, right?
Yep.
And so this comet gives firebenders the most power and the most ability and the most strength. And it's kind of an interesting thing, because while this comet is going on, one, you have the fight between the airbender and the Fire Lord, and then you also have the White Lotus group taking over Ba Sing Se again and getting rid of the Fire Nation out of there. And I think it's super cool to see how firebending used for good is done. Like Aang, like he's in the Avatar state for half of this series, and it's amazing what he does with it. But then you have like Uncle Iroh, and I forget the guy who's originally Aang's teacher is a member of the White Lotus as well, and they're firebending and doing this amazing and beautiful stuff. But then you have Azula, who's like, she's obsessed with lightning more than she is fire, I feel. But like it's just amazing episode, and I could talk about it forever. But it's really curious to see how like the Fire Lord, even though he was in this, like his strengths were when he felt the most victorious, as opposed to when he started to get afraid and fearful. Like it's very interesting. I don't know.
Yeah, no, and I think they do such a good build up to Sozins' comet, and they talk about it for a couple episodes before, just like it's a huge build up, and then when you actually get to see how powerful they are with the comet, like that first scene where like he's deep breathing and then he shoots out fire from his fists that go from like he's probably like 500 feet in the air and just like burning down this entire forest by himself. Like you see the power, and like that's something that they do really well. Again, they show, like they do a build up, and then like the build up is super gratifying, and like you said, there's so many different elements of this episode that all just tick every single mark, and every part of it is just perfectly crafted.
Yeah.
I don't have anything bad to say about that, except for we don't know what happened to his sword, and the cliffhanger. Like the show ends on a cliffhanger, and you think there's going to be more episodes, but then the creators decided to just like leave it as it was because it was already perfection. But just like Zuko goes over to his dad that like no longer spoilers, huge spoilers. I mean, there's already been spoilers.
I'll note a spoiler at the beginning of the episode, so don't worry.
Yeah. Anyways, Zuko's dad doesn't have his bending anymore, and he goes to the prison and where his dad is, and Zuko's the Fire Lord now, and he asked the question that everybody was asking after the episodes that focus on Zuko, and he just asked him the last words of the whole show: "Where's my mother?" And you're like, what? Like, is she still alive? Like, what happened? And like, just like ends with so many questions. Like, you're so gratified with everything that happened, like so fulfilled, like everything ended perfectly, and then they add this one more thing to like make all the fans go crazy. You're like, what? And it does get answered in a comic book. You can rent it at the library. Most libraries will probably have it, or you can buy it off Amazon. My brother, like, he got me into this. Danny, big shout out to you. But yeah, he bought all the comic books that like explain more of the different lore, and they go into like the backstory of Kyoshi, and they explain Zuko's mom. And a super cool story. It's comic book style. I wish it was a TV series because they did it so good, and just have like extra mini episodes afterwards. I think that would be cool, but they're probably not going to do that.
No. I think they understand that they did a really good thing, and leaving it on a cliffhanger like left so many ideas up in the air, right? And I actually like, I felt satisfied at the end of the series, even with that cliffhanging question. It was rad. And I know that people wanted more from it, because who doesn't want more from it in a way? Like, yeah. But like, if you push out the story too long, it loses its value and sustenance, and you can't really continue a film like, or a series like this as easy. And so, no, Paul, I just want to say thanks for coming over and chatting about this with me. Do you have any closing thoughts or anything like that you want to hurry and address about this series?
Yeah, I think the main takeaway out of this whole show is to live a balanced life. You know, there's good in this world, there's bad in this world, there's good inside of us, and there's bad inside of us. And you know, as we go through life, we're gonna experience both, and recognizing that and being okay with that, but being like striving to be Uncle Iroh, and striving to like understand more, be more, become more. That's the main takeaway. And you know, having balance in all things is the most important thing, and the most important takeaway from this whole show, I think.
I love that. Like, balance is key. I love just finding balance, and I think that it's a hard thing for a lot of people to find, and that goes along with growth, right? Like, balance and growth are like two sides of the same coin, I guess. You want to have both of them, so you want to figure out a way to land your coin when you flip it straight vertically. I don't know, but I love that, because like, I like think of this as growth. Like, this whole series is about growth and finding balance, right? And recognizing that despite your weaknesses, despite your shortcomings, despite your fears, you are enough to defeat the Fire Lord, essentially. Because whatever your Fire Lord might be, you can do it if you put the time in. Sometimes you'll have sleepless nights. Sometimes you'll have doubts. Sometimes you might get deterred or go on an adventure or have an episode of your life that doesn't seem like it's adding value, but you're gaining experience, and that's what this show is about. So, no, Paul, thank you for coming in, having a discussion with me, for doing this little thing. We're gonna talk more. I think as soon as I finish Legends of Korra, I think we should come back and do another one.
Heck yeah, dude. I Legend of Korra has its faults, but the principles in each season are really cool, and they tie it back to this, which is balance, Yeah. So I'd love to talk more about that.
I feel like when I started watching that, it was like, I'm starting over at square one with Aang again. Here we go. Okay, here's my final question for you.
Yeah.
Did you watch the M. Night Shyamalan movie?
Heck no.
Okay.
I heard terrible things about it and decided not to watch it, not to pay the money for it when it came in theaters. I was really excited about it, but decided not to do it. And then one time I was like on Facebook or YouTube, I can't remember, and they showed side by side of like some of the scenes from the live action movie that M. Night Shyamalan did versus the animated show, and Oh my goodness, the pacing. That's something that I love about animation is like they control the pacing really well. That is really hard to do in live action, and they completely failed. And I didn't even watch the show. I watched like 3 clips, and I'm like, nope, not worth my time. So
Well, that's what a lot of avid fans said was like this was just a huge flop. I've watched it, and I watched it before I'd watched the whole series, to be honest with you. I thought it was not bad, but I thought it was not great. I only watched it once, and I remember that the Airbender tattoos are like different, and there's a number of things that are different, but like, it wasn't good. Yeah. But that was my question. But in the end, like, thank you guys for tuning in again to the Pause Rambling podcast. Paul, thank you for joining me on the podcast. And the going away messages, if you should decide to watch the series, if you haven't already and you've watched this episode full of spoilers, go back and watch it. If you have watched it, go revisit again. It's on Netflix. If you have a subscription, get it. If your girlfriend, your ex-girlfriend, whatever, your uncle has a subscription, get it, steal it, borrow it, whatever, and look into getting a little bit more insight into, balance and growth by watching Avatar: The Last Airbender.
Heck yeah.